If you're wondering about Precision Matthews' new PM1440 HVT-2 lathe, we've had it here for a while. In this video, we're gonna get hands-on with it, share some results, cover all the feeds and specs, and more. Gavin here from UltimateReloader.com. That's right, the lathe is here. We absolutely love it. I'm gonna waste no time and get straight into a machining demo. Okay. So what I've got here, I've got the 3-jaw adjustable chuck installed. This is just a barrel cutoff. So this is 416R stainless. I'm just gonna chuck this up and we'll do some simple OD turning, and I'll do a little bit of facing and boring with the boring bar as well. The first thing that you're gonna notice about this lathe, if you've been watching the channel, is this is variable speed. So I'm in high range. We've got low range and high range. I'm going to turn the speed down, turn on the spindle. We've got our RPM display right there. This has actually got a slight taper to it, so it's going to take a little bit of turning to get this to run true. I'm using a VNMG insert here, and we've got a very fine feed rate that we've got the machine set to right now. We can change our speed on the fly. Really nice to have that variable speed. Take another pass there. Had really good luck with these VNMG inserts. Okay. Looks like a nice quality cut there. This is a Simtech boring bar, solid carbide. Really, really good cut with this tool as well. Now, if we want to feed from the center out, we're just going to take our feed direction and reverse that. Start with a little bit of a facing operation. Carbide tooling likes a high speed. We're running 1700 RPM right now. And then we might want to do a recessed counterbore here. Do another little facing bit there. I'm going to slow it down for that chamfer cut. There we go, just a couple of quick cuts with the machine just so you can see it in action. So let's just do a little bit more turning to kind of round out the demo. Switching between low and high speeds, super simple. We can go from about 30 RPM up to 300 in our low range, which is great for threading. I've done a whole bunch of threading on this lathe, works really, really good. Half nut engages really smoothly, that sort of thing. And then if we want to switch to high range, we've got neutral in the middle, by the way. It's really nice detent for that and easy to get in and out of for things like getting our part centered, indicating barrels, that sort of thing. And then into high, and this is where we can go up to 2200 RPM. I got it set for 8 thousandths of an inch per revolution feed rate. Let's take a little bit of a heavier cut here. So we're zeroing somewhere around there. Get that a little bit more precise. Okay, right there. Call that good. That's X0, so let's take off like, I don't know, 1/10 of an inch. So there's 1/10 of an inch. Turn up our RPMs a little bit, make some blue chips here. It's certainly not complaining. Yeah. So you definitely have all the power you need, and just having that variable speed, such a great thing to have. Okay, for another demo, I've got some aluminum tubing loaded here, and we'll go ahead and turn a thread relief, turn the OD down, and do some 12 TPI threads. Okay, so I've got the OD cut, and we've got our thread relief. So we're gonna go ahead and shift the levers for 12 threads per inch. So we've got MY, BD. Okay. So now we can go ahead and thread. Check my dial. We can use all 16 of the reference positions. All right, everything is set. We're gonna go ahead and there we go, some nice threads. So we do have another video that covered our entire process of getting this machine uncrated, getting it into position, leveling it, cleaning it, kind of all of the basic setup. Beyond that, I've done quite a few rifle builds with this lathe. The very first rifle that I built on this lathe was one of our 223 Remington trainers, and I could not believe it. The first 3 shots out of the rifle went into 0.166 inches. That is the way to get a project started on a lathe. Absolutely love it. I've also built multiple additional rifles with this lathe, a 308 Winchester, 6.5 Creedmoor, and more. So I've had enough time to get used to the machine and to get used to its capabilities, feeds, speeds, dimensions, all of that. I really like using this lathe, and I'll have to say, I've gotten totally hooked on this variable speed drive. It is amazing. It was super simple to hook up. We've got single phase 240 power coming to behind the machine. You can either hook it up single phase or 3-phase. It was absolutely no problem to get it going. No need for a phase converter. No need for other fancy equipment on the lathe to change single-phase power to 3-phase power, that kind of thing. A VFD, for instance, which can be quite complicated to wire into place. This machine has that built in because of it's a part of the variable speed drive. Okay. Also, don't need to use the brake on the machine, which has been really nice. When you slow the machine down, if we have the spindle going, we shut it off, it brakes itself as a part of the variable speed drive. So that is super handy as well. I've done some tooling work. So when I chamber rifles on this machine and on my other lathes now, I use these rigid reamer holders, and these are machined in place. So I put this into the tailstock, keep track of the orientation. I go ahead and bulk drill, putting a drill into the chuck and advancing the quill on the tailstock to drill out the material, and then use a single point boring setup with a boring head and precisely bore it so that there's a very tight slip fit for the reamer. This is a really great rigid work holding setup, and it's helped me to build rifles that have really good surface finish and really good dimensional correctness for the chambers. So that's a process that I've gone through on the machine, and then I've also made some custom parts on it as well. So the machine has already gotten a lot of use, and I'm really liking it. Next, let's talk specs. So this is a 1440 class lathe, and that means that it's got a 14-inch swing and it's got 40 inches capacity between centers. The drive is a variable speed system with a 6 horsepower, 3-phase motor and a built-in VFD. Now in terms of the movements, we've got 7.75 inches for cross slide travel this way, and we've got 3.75 inches of compound slide movement at whatever angle that you've got it set to. The tailstock has a Morse Taper 3 internal taper, and it's got 4 inches of travel. In terms of threads, we can go from 4 threads per inch to 56 threads per inch on the English side, and we can go from 0.4 millimeters on the fine side to 7 millimeters on the coarse side for metric threads. The spindle is a D15 mount. It's got a Morse Taper 5.5 internal taper. The spindle is 17 3/8 inches long, which is nice. It's a short spindle, which is good for gunsmithing work. And it's got just over 2 inches of through spindle capacity. So you can actually work on a 2-inch blank if you're turning a barrel or whatever stock it is that you're turning, and have just a little bit of movement in there. The weight on this machine, as configured with the cast iron base, is 2,350 pounds net. That's the machine itself. The country of origin is Taiwan, and there's 2 different prices depending on which base you get. The standard steel base comes in at $13,999, so basically $14,000. As of all of this pricing information, as of the filming of this video, subject to change. With the cast iron base, it's $15,599. And another notable thing that I failed to mention when I was talking about the threading ranges is this is an English lead screw. So that means if you're working on English threading, in other words, 5/8 24, 1 1/8 by 16, or 1 1/16 by 18, all those SAE threads are going to be able to use the half nut lever engagement and disengagement method rather than having to keep it engaged, withdraw the tool, move back, or other tricks to deal with an English metric mismatch between the threads that you're cutting, those specs, and the specs for the lead screw. So if you're doing SAE threads, great way to go. Okay, now that's this machine, the PM1440 HVT-2. You've also seen the PM1440 GT here on the channel quite a bit. So I thought I would show you a comparison of the specs between those 2 different models. Okay, so this is the side-by-side, and what I've done is, here in yellow, we've got all of the differences outlined. So this machine is variable speed, has a 6 horsepower motor, and it's either single phase or 3-phase, just depends on how you hook up those terminals. The PM1440 GT is gear driven, so individual speeds that you flip levers to switch between speeds. It's got a 2 horsepower single phase motor or a 3 horsepower 3-phase motor. Okay, Cross slide travel, 7.75 inches here compared to 6.5 on the other machine. Compound slide travel, 3 3/4 for this machine versus 3.5 on the PM1440 GT. Also, the thread ranges are slightly different but pretty similar. And then the spindles are identical except for the length. This has a 17 3/8 spindle, whereas the PM1440 GT has a 15.5-inch spindle, which is super nice for gunsmithing work, especially when those barrels get a little bit shorter. The weight on this machine is 2,350 pounds, and the weight on the PM1440 GT is 1,750 pounds. Both are made in Taiwan. And in terms of pricing, the two different levels here, basically $14,000 and $15,599, depending on the base that you choose, versus the PM1440 GT with the steel base, that's the only option that you have, at $11,599. Now, we've been talking about two lathes here. Let's go take a quick look at the 1440 GT so that I can refresh your memory on what that lathe looks like. So this is the PM1440 GT. Had this for a number of years, still use it all the time. And again, the two big differences are you're going to manually change gears for different speeds rather than having variable speed, and the machine is lighter and does not have the cast iron base. So I've got it on high on number 4, so that's going to be 700 RPM. It sounds just a little bit different, and if we want to change the speed, we can go to, say, medium. And it's just a little bit slower to work with the speed changes, and I tend to use the brake a lot more because it doesn't have its own braking built into the drive system. Again, very similar lathe, exactly the same swing and between centers capacity. A lot of the controls are actually the same, but you don't have the variable speed. And I even took the spider that I had built for this. I did the same side cover mod. It fit right on because the spindles, other than that length difference that I mentioned, are the same. So there you go. A quick comparison of the PM1440 GT to the PM1440 HVT-2. So in terms of what's included with the lathe, some of it is bolted to the machine and the rest of it is right here. And I'm going to go through in the order that it's listed on the product page. So the LED work light. This is really nice. It definitely helps see details, and LEDs are just far superior, in my opinion, to the incandescent lights that we used to have. Spindle reducing sleeve. This is Morse taper 5.5, and then it's Morse taper 3. So the dead centers here are going to work with that if you want to use that in that way. There's a 4-way tool post turret style right here. I chose to go with the Aloris style, so I haven't used that yet. We've got 2 dead centers, one for the headstock and one for the tailstock, and the tailstock one has carbide center on it, the tip, really nice. A threading dial, that is just standard equipment and works really well. It's got the little chart on the side that shows you which positions are valid for which TPI settings that you're using. Okay, we've got a steady rest and a follow rest, really nice to have. I've been profiling barrels on the PM1440 GT, and the follow rest has proven to be real helpful with that to prevent tool chatter on really long, really slender work. We've got a D15 faceplate. This is also very handy. If you're turning between centers, you can get your lathe dog in there in these slots. Cast iron leveling pads, which I've used when I was putting the machine in place, and then of course to get it level and to have it stay level. And then the tool kit, some of which is here, and the change gears, depending on what kind of threading you're doing. It could be metric threading that requires some of these gear change combinations. Okay, so in addition to what came with the lathe, I've added a bunch of stuff as well. I've got the 3-jaw chuck, which is adjustable. This is great. You can clamp your part and then you can make offsets to dial in your run out to basically near 0 or 0. Really, really awesome. It's been nice to have that versatility. And between the PM1440 GT and this lathe, I'd like to keep a 3-jaw chuck on one of the two because I do a lot of tooling and different types of turning that just a 3-jaw chuck is definitely really nice to have. Now for rifle gunsmithing, I'm using a 4-jaw chuck. These are both chucks that are listed on the product page for the PM1440 HVT-2. and I'll also have links for these in the article. Now, speaking of articles, I did a complete video and article on the construction of this outboard spider. This is to dial in barrels and to be able to support it on the outside, to actually be able to steer and support the backside of the barrel when you're dialing that in for just absolute laser precision for rifle barrel chambering. It has 4 screws that can be adjusted to center up and support on the back. It has a unique pinch clamp design. I stole this from the PM1440 GT. I need to make another one so that I have one on each lathe. Because the OD of the spindle was the same, it slipped right on. And I did the same side cover mod to accommodate that because the opening is not large enough the way that it comes from the factory. So that is an absolute essential. Okay, I've got an Aloris tool post. I went with BXA. I've heard that you can also run CXA, which is the larger size, which I've got on my TL1660 lathe. The BXA seems to work really well, and it's compatible with a lot of the low-cost aftermarket tool holders that you can find. But I got a multi-piece set used on eBay. Comes with a bunch of the different original USA-made Aloris tool holder bits, and that's really good stuff. So we've also got the Mag Exact. This is the MX100L DRO. This is accurate to 2/10,000ths of an inch on Z, which is this direction, and 1/10,000th of an inch on diameter. Super, super good. Use it all the time, all the way through every job, pretty much, especially when chambering rifle barrels. Comes in absolutely very, very handy, and Precision Matthews did the install on that. It's an additional fee. It's well worth it, in my opinion. Really good stuff. I've got this adjustable ER40 chuck. This is an ER40 collet, really nice size collet. I also bought 2 different sets of collets, an SAE set and a metric set. So I'm covered on that. I don't know if I'm going to need to go to 5C collets on this lathe. I've got a setup for the other one, and I have a D15 spindle. I can use any of these chucks on either lathe, so really there's no need to invest in a second 5C collet setup. And likewise, this ER40 set has already been on the PM1440 GT for a number of things. Okay, moving our way through the tooling, I added the rigid reamer holders, which I described earlier. This is the after. This is what it looks like when I'm done, and this is just the blank that I got online. This is a soft, machinable Morse taper number 3 shank blank tool. And like I said, what we do is we drill with the drill in the chuck on the headstock side. Then we use an adjustable boring head to bore to precisely the right diameter. This is critical. You need a tight fit on this so that your reamer is not pushed off center by the set screw. I have a single set screw for the single flat design, and I use 2 set screws if I've got flats on the back and another place to push with the set screw on the front. This setup works so good for reaming rifle chambers that you can literally hear the difference. It is dead solid, it does not vibrate, it does not chatter, and you can hear the difference as it's cutting. There's also a custom tailstock DRO that I put on the lathe, and that enables me to monitor the depth of any of the cuts that I'm making, whether it be drilling or reaming, that kind of thing. And this is used in conjunction with a hard stop point. I modified one of the scale mounting screws for the DRO so that I could come up against it with the tailstock and repeat perfectly and not damage the scale for the DRO. So those are some of the things that I've done. I'm still working on some of the additional tooling, but I'm really liking the way that I have the lathe set up, and it's working super good. Okay, so I'm going to take the chuck off and we'll do a quick spindle runout test. Okay, we should be all ready. Let's see what we got. That is some very, very slight movement, plus or minus about a half of a 10,000th of an inch. Nice result. Okay, let's take a look at tailstock quill squareness. We're just going to sweep along the top here, and that will give us our angle this way, or deflection rather. So, as you can see, that is near perfect. We've got a little movement there when we changed directions. I don't know if you saw that. Let's see again. Okay, so we're at negative 1/10,000th of an inch. We sweep along. Yeah, and we stop. We're still at that negative 1/10. You can see that we're deflected quite a bit there. Back it all the way off. There we go. So in terms of this direction, basically dead on. So along the backside, we're going to be able to evaluate how square the quill is along that angle. So I'm just going to go nice and slow here. We have to stop short of our cutout there, so a little bit less than 1/10,000th of an inch there. Let's see what happens when we come all the way back. We're at 0. And back one more time. Not quite a 10,000th of an inch. And back to 0. That's really good. So just covering all the levers and all the different features here. We've got the tailstock with the traditional in-feed hand wheel on the end, the bed lock and the quill lock here. We've got the saddle with our Z feed for the entire saddle, left and right. We've got the cross slide wheel here. This has a friction change for zeroing, which I really like. When I do threading, I'll tend to do that. I'll zero the wheel here, and then I'll zero the wheel here. These are both friction. They don't move, which is good, unless you're zeroing them. And we've got power feeds on the X and on the Z. So if we're over here, we're on the Z. If we're over here, we're on the X. And the speed is changed over here on our direction change. We've got the half nut lever, which engages feeds for threading. We've got spindle directions, so reverse and forward. And then we've got the sort of main control panel. You noticed up here we've got our RPMs displayed. There it is, floored. 2240. We've also got a jog button. We've got high, neutral, and low speed ranges. We've got coolant, there's a pump down in the bottom, the spindle speed control, the stop, and then we've got the shifters. Now the shifters for different positions are going to be either our threads per inch or our millimeter pitch for metric threading, or they're going to be our power feed, inches per revolution or millimeters per revolution. So all of these shift really easy. The interface on the lathe is going to be really familiar for those of you that have run an engine lathe like this before. So very familiar, having run the PM1440 GT, and some definite and welcome improvements. So in conclusion, I have fallen in love with this lathe. This is a great piece of equipment. The rifles that I've built so far on this lathe have been shooting absolutely amazing. And like I said, compared to a traditional 1440 geared lathe, this gives me some added rigidity and weight. The cast iron base is awesome, and I love the variable speed. I can thread or do heavy drilling in low range, 0 to 300 RPM, and in high range I can go all the way up to 2200 RPM, and that covers everything I do for everything but those other two tasks, right? So it's great. I love how smoothly that it shifts. It's got all the feeds and the speeds and the threads per inch that I want. I love the way that the threading dial and the half nut work for threading. It's just a really solid, well put together machine. And to have an all Taiwanese machine like this that's available at a relatively affordable price point is just a really great option. Now, I would say in concluding that if you're looking at this lathe, you should also consider the TL series from Precision Matthews. There's the PM1440 TL, the PM1640 TL, and the machine that I have, which is the PM1660 TL, which is 16-inch swing and 60 inches between centers. That machine does absolutely everything. Granted, it's more expensive than this particular machine, and the trade-off, the biggest trade-off when I go between machines, is it doesn't have the variable speed that the PM1440 HVT-2 has. So, like everything else in life, I have to choose which is the right tool on that day for that job. I've been having so much fun. I hope this video has been helpful for you all, and if you have specific questions, don't hesitate to ask those down in the comments section. Also, don't forget, if you click on that first link in the video description, there's an article with a lot more information and more feeds and speeds and links to product pages, all the other information that you're going to need if you're shopping for one of these lathes. I'd love to hear what you think of it. Again, if you want to share your opinion, drop a comment and we'll start that discussion. That concludes this video, and that means it's time to wrap it up. I hope you enjoyed this video. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Also, we're on Facebook, YouTube, Rumble, where we've got unrestricted content, and Instagram. Make sure to follow us on all those channels. Ultimate Reloader also has a commercial solutions division serving law enforcement, the military, and the gun industry. We have some unique capabilities, including a comprehensive suite of recoil testing and evaluation capabilities, trigger profiling, and more. If you're interested in custom rifles like what we build here on the channel or gunsmithing services, you're going to want to go to rifles.ultimatereloader.com and get on the wait list. If you want to learn lucrative gunsmithing like what I show here on the channel, including building custom rifles and Cerakote plus a whole bunch more, you're going to want to check out the Colorado School of Trades, schooloftrades.edu. Thanks again for watching.